What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded. I knew you couldn't hear me as soon as I said it, so I stopped to address that. You're going to see me look to the right because everything is running on my second screen, not my first. So I'm going to jump right into it. Check me at twitter.com/Lore Reloaded as long as you don't mind me giving controversial opinions or talking about controversial topics. Twitch.tv/Lore Reloaded. Been playing some fun games there as well. I'm going to be reviewing a video by one Steve Shives, but before I get into that, check the description if you want a more succinct and probably better, not confrontation, but better response. You will find that in Anti-Trekker's video. I've included that. His video is the one that inspired me to do this one. So again, after watching this, or if you don't want to watch this, I would suggest checking out his stuff. I also kind of want to take a minute to address some frustrations because I know it's going to come up. I generally only look at addressing ideas and things of that nature, ideas specifically when it comes to my opinions. I try not to involve the individual because the individual at the end of the day doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what Steve Shives thinks. Doesn't matter what, I don't know, Trexpertise thinks. Doesn't matter what Obama thinks. What it matters is the ideas themselves, which is what I try to address. But apparently you can't get messed up by your headphones. But apparently you can't address an idea unless yours is known. So I guess I need to kind of put it out there just because it's going to come up. Generally, I am right of left, if you want to put me somewhere. At least that's how I see myself. I am fiscally conservative, or more conservative, though I do believe in a progressive tax, and I am socially liberal. I actually don't agree with a lot of what red states agree with, and if you have a lot of opinions that come from the Judeo-Christian faith, we will most likely disagree on those. None of that matters to what I'm about to address, by the way. It doesn't matter at all what I believe, but because it's going to come up, I'm going to go ahead and just put that out there. So, now that I can give you that to attack me on, we're going to be looking at a video done by Steve Shives. It's "What Do Conservatives Actually Like About Star Trek?" ? I saw this a little ways back. I saw it about a month ago when he first came out with it. I didn't watch it because I knew it would piss me off. And then I saw Anti-Trekker respond to it, and lo and behold, it pissed me off. Let me be really clear here. Anyone can enjoy Star Trek, from conservative to liberal, progressive or otherwise. Socialist, alt-right, doesn't matter. You can really enjoy Star Trek regardless. Star Trek itself does have messages, and I think anyone who tries to deny that it doesn't lean left is an idiot. However, the messages given up until Disco Trek, till New Trek, has been fairly nuanced. I used to say subtle. I don't think subtle is the right word. I will say nuanced. Unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. That said, Picard has done a few things that are very nuanced that I've liked, but Discovery definitively did not. So, we're going to be taking a look at this. I will go back and see what you guys have said. You know how this works. And hey, if you disagree with me, definitely let me know. Of course, even before I started, people were saying that I was putting together a straw man, so it's going to be spicy tonight. We got some spicy takes. Last thing before we get into it, just so you know, I know Steve Shive. I've known Steve Shives for 3 or 4 years. Steve Shives, originally I ran a Christian channel, if you can believe it, and had a lot of good interactions with Steve Shives. He gave my channel a shout out 4 years ago, something stupid like that. I've had him on several different podcasts and things that I've run. And up until the Carlos Mendez thing, we actually had good interaction, even with this channel. After that, he unfollowed me on all social media. I haven't talked to him since. I'm not sure what he thinks about me. Steve, I have always had an interesting relationship with, because at the end of the day, Steve Shives is probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met, who thinks just the absolute worst about what my ideas or ideals are, or me specifically. He's one of the few people that have ever called me a sexist, but he did it in the nicest way that I've ever seen. And not because I said or did anything sexist at the point. He just says that I have internalized sexism, and then pointed out that he does as well. So, jolly good times. You know, and again, I'm really addressing the ideas. The fact that it's done by Steve doesn't necessarily matter. But this video encapsulates everything that is wrong on both sides, on all sides of the Trek fandom, especially on YouTube. Whether you're We Are Starfleet or Fandom Menace, left, right, it shows, it really encapsulates, it's like Steve took all of the things that were wrong in the community and put them into a video. And so we're going to be addressing that specifically. So there are people that, and just so you know, because again, apparently you can't respond to a video without assuming that you're on either side. Just because Steve made a really bad video that encapsulates what I would consider left bigotry or liberal bigotry does not necessarily mean that there aren't equivalents on the right, nor does it mean that Steve is always in the wrong or all of that good stuff. So give it a quick second, see what you guys are saying, and then we shall get back into all of this. Thank you for allowing me to go with my diatribe there. I've never had a good interaction with Steve. Nope, not reading that one. Laura, let me put it this way. What you are, left or right, doesn't matter. If you enjoy Trek and enjoy discussing it, you're okay with me. You start talking about how TOS is sexist, racist, etc. Nah. Yeah, I mean, if you don't like the stuff we do. But anyway, that goes for all of you in chat, says Wayward. I'm a conservative and I've always liked Trek. What hit me lately was the core of Trek has a thing at its core which is deeply entrenched in both left and right. People helping each other. I'd agree with that. I do think that Trek is, you know, very left, leaning left. I don't know that I'd say very left-leaning, but leaning left. If you're a vegan, I'll drown you in pork fat. Well, that's just mean, Portnov. All right. Stupid political ranting. You guys have fun. I'm going to dip. Talk to you later, Timmy the Squirrel. And I would agree with what Platt says. Too many people look at others as stereotypes and not individuals. I agree. All right. Let's get into this. I'm going to test it real quick. You guys let me know if you can hear it. And yeah, someone else pointed it out, right? We can have a discussion. We can discuss this, but don't get personal and don't do attacks. Because I don't mind banning or at least kicking you out for a little while. All right. So let me know if you guys can hear this. There we go.
Fandom is a funny thing. It can take people who have nothing in common other than like...
All right. Can you guys hear it? Also, there's a lot of cursing in here. Steve does that. So, can you hear it okay? Hi, Laura, by the way. You holding up okay? I'm doing well, Gareth. Hope you're doing well. Politics has leaked into everything. Yeah, you know, I've thought that as well. By the way, I'm just waiting for you guys to confirm if you can hear it. I believe that as well. I wonder if it's always been there, though, and we've just gotten older and now notice it. Marin Nanor, let's look. Let's address his video, and then you tell me. Yeah, I heard that. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let him play, do some responses, and see what you guys do, address any questions or anything you have going on. So let's do it.
Fandom is a funny thing. It can take people who have nothing in common other than liking the same show or band or team and bring them together into a community. And that can be a really wonderful thing. It can also be the exact opposite. After all, just because someone else is, say, a pro wrestling fan, that doesn't mean I'm going to get along with them. I know this will come as a shock to many of you, but lots of wrestling fans are major assholes. In fact, lots of people are major assholes, generally speaking. So many people that while it's always disappointing...
Completely agree. Could not agree more. No matter what you believe or what you do or who you are, You can be an absolute jerk. By the way, I love how he does his background. I cannot do backgrounds. I can't dress the scene. I really have got to work on that and start trying. Wow, sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that. But yeah, I would agree. And that's one of my major things. So whether you're left, right, whether you voted for Obama or voted for Trump, whether you're a Christian or an atheist, you can be a jerk. And you're just going to use what you believe to be a jerk. That's what frustrates me about a lot of people. A lot of people say, well, person X is a jerk because they believe in Christianity or they're an atheist. No, they're just a jerk. And they happen to believe this, and they're going to use that to make your life bad. So I agree. Regardless of what you believe, you can be a jerk.
Speaking, so many people that while it's always disappointing, it should never be surprising when we encounter them in our various fan communities. Having said that, I admit there is one particular subgroup of a fan community that did surprise me when I first learned about them. That group is conservatives, and that fan community is, of course, the Star Trek fan community.
It's because you're a bigot. Steve, you are a bigot. And the funny thing is, and the frustrating thing is, and we're going to go into why, so if you guys are wondering why I'm saying that right off the bat, we're going to get into it. The thing that frustrates me is you are doing what the people you hate do. Steve is a big feminist. He's big on social justice. Me and him would agree on a lot of things when it comes to social ills. Racists, he's very much against racists who take an attribute of a person and then associate them with different proclivities because of that attribute. Throughout this entire video, that's what Steve does. Throughout this entire video, Steve says that if you are a conservative, then you by definition are X, when not all conservatives are that way. And yet he includes everybody. In fact, I would say that Steve I'll say this. I think newer generations of conservatives are a lot better than former generations of conservatives. I think that the Republican Party is still eat up with issues that they've had of old. And I think people in power still have a lot of problems. But the newer generations, the people who are growing up today, like millennials or pre-millennials, aren't as bad as what Steve would say. But Steve thinks that if you're a conservative, if you believe in smaller government, if you believe that every time a law is created, it takes some right or some form of freedom away, if you believe that there are certain things that just exist, then you must also believe what racist conservatives believe. You must also believe what... Anyway, we'll continue on with it.
For those of you who are as naive as I used to be, yes, there are conservatives who love Star Trek. A lot of them. How many? How large a percentage of the overall fan base are they? I don't know, but I run into them often enough that I sometimes find myself wondering, what do conservatives actually like about Star Trek? First, let me clear something up. A second ago, I was talking about how every fandom has its assholes, and then I transitioned straight into conservative Star Trek fans. That may have given some of you the impression that I was trying to imply that conservatives are, by definition, assholes. So, if you are a conservative and you thought that's what I was doing just now, let me assure you, I'm not saying that being a conservative automatically means that you are an asshole.
Here it is.
I'm saying it means you think like an asshole. I'm saying it means you hold certain opinions which could lead other people, judging your character on the basis of those opinions, to conclude.
Oh, Steve. Steve, my dear friend. Steve, please judge me not on... What is it? What is it? Let's look it up. Ooh, someone's coming. Hold on. What's up, baby? Yeah, go get it.
Yes.
Can you close that door? Hey, I love you.
I love you.
Judge me not on my politics, but by the content of my character, good sir. Steve, please stop being bigoted.
That you're an asshole, but it doesn't mean you are one necessarily. I cannot wait for the comments on this one. Oh, your bias is so blatant. I expected you to be more impartial. But like...
anyone who expects him to be impartial doesn't watch his stuff.
Why? As delightful as it would be, and as richly as they deserve it, I'm not going to spend the rest of this video insulting conservatives. I'm going to insult them intermittently while exploring the various aspects of Star Trek that I think they're attracted to. But before that exploration can get underway, I think a definition is in order. What do I mean when I say conservative?
Okay, so Steve Shives has the definition. This is what I'm talking about. He's actually going to get into it, and I apologize for not for not skipping this because I know it's a little bit boring. But here's my problem. This again encapsulates everything that is wrong with our community. Again, whether you are toxic left, like Steve Shives, whether you are fandom menace, whether you are toxic right, whether you are We Are Starfleet, and even I've done it, I'm sure, and continue to do it in instances that I don't know, we all do have our blinders. If you sit there and say a complete group of people is X, then you are the problem. It literally is that simple. It is because of these beliefs, because to say this tribe is Y, that creates such a disassociation. It creates hatred. It creates all kinds of issues in what we do. There is this chick I have never met, but apparently is really big in the Trek community because I keep getting associated with her. Batleth Babe. No idea who she is, but she uses Bandbot. She has to. I have no idea. I've never met her. And because of that, we're never going to have a conversation. There are people are banned from talking to actors or from being a part of CBS because they hold ideas. Not because of what they've done, but because they hold certain ideas. Trek is, I completely believe, about bringing people together and about ideas. And so you can't do that if you think everyone has an X association. Not all conservatives think alike. In fact, I do, as I said, have conservative views when it comes to fiscal issues. I'm not going to get into a debate about it, but what I do believe is that capitalism is the best way that we can fund social programs. That you have to have that the best way is to have a capitalist economy that will fund a progressive tax, will fund social welfare. I'm not going to argue with you if you think I'm wrong. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But that's the amount of conservative views that I have. And I have voted based on that. But my liberal opinions, or my more progressive opinions, generally completely align, well, not completely, generally align with Steve. But because I understand that there's nuance in this, I can be put as a conservative and thus am the biggest racist you've ever seen. Part of this, too, and I'm going to be honest with you, part of why I'm addressing this is because yesterday, I think it was yesterday, I do a lot of videos. Yesterday, I did a video on why I think why I think Picard was insulting to the LGBT community, and why Discovery actually did it right. I put the thumbnail on Twitter. And by putting the thumbnail on Twitter, I got attacked from some of the most toxic leftists you will ever meet, who had no idea what my opinion was and thought I was just attacking Picard because it was two chicks. Also assuming that I'm heterosexual and that I'm just this cis white male that is giving my opinion to persons of color. None of that matters when it comes to the facts, but to them, that's all it was. And these are people who have Trek in their bios, people who try to talk about how Star Trek is bringing everyone together. And they're making assumptions because I fit a stereotype. I am in fact not necessarily heterosexual, though generally I am with females. But that doesn't matter. The opinions do. That's what makes me mad about this. And I'm sorry, guys, because I feel like I'm ranting and not really getting into the meat of the video. But already, it has me pretty frustrated.
Very broadly speaking, for the purposes of this video, I'm defining a conservative as someone who favors unregulated free market economics, who wants small government, who values individual liberty but also seeks to maintain traditional social and political hierarchies, who prefers stability over social change, who is skeptical of progress, who finds social justice movements either unnecessary or threatening, who is pro-military, nationalistic, and who tends to vote for right-wing candidates in elections. Are all conservatives all of those things? No.
But you treat them all that way. That's the problem. We're 3 minutes in, it's a 23-minute video, and for the rest of the video, you're going to sit here and assume they're all together.
Do some conservatives have traits I didn't list just now? Yes. But in general, I think that gives you a pretty good idea.
It doesn't, Steve. It doesn't. You don't have any...
I'm talking about.
Okay, we're going to address his ideas. I'm sorry. I'm getting more into this than I thought I would. It doesn't matter what his opinion of conservatives are. So I'm going to continue on. I apologize.
When I say conservative. So why the hell would someone like that enjoy Star Trek, which has always been openly and intentionally progressive? There are a few plausible reasons. Many conservatives who have commented on my videos claim to enjoy Star Trek purely as an escapist sci-fi action-adventure show. They're either oblivious to its often heavy-handed political messaging, or they willfully ignore it.
Oh, man. We're going to come back to that, but the irony in that statement.
Some are so determined to view the show as nothing more than a shallow, silly outer space romp that they get annoyed with people like me for injecting politics into Star Trek, which...
They shouldn't, by the way. I think that... I'm going to say this. I think that if you want to take media or a medium or a story and parse out whatever you want from it, I think that's absolutely... I think that's good. I think that's how we become more... how we understand humanity better. So I will agree with him that conservatives that get upset at him for trying to parse out liberal ideology or trying to show where the episodes were saying this, well, you shouldn't. Well, it's not that you shouldn't. It's that you really getting upset about that or telling him not to is wrong.
Okay, I get that maybe you'd prefer not to focus on that part of the show because you don't like constantly being told what a dick you are, but nobody has to inject politics into Star Trek. They're already in there. Whining over people injecting politics into Star Trek makes as much sense as criticizing that video I made about Worf a while back for injecting Klingons into Star Trek. Like what you like for whatever reason you like it, but just because you don't pay attention to the show doesn't mean the rest of us don't.
You know, it's really interesting to me because I don't think that this is something that Steve would hold to every medium. However, so I personally look at TV, television, movies and stuff as a form of art. I think it is. Whatever you get out of it is whatever you get out of it. It doesn't matter. Like one of the best, I think, one of the best quotes, and let me see if I can find it, is from Quentin Tarantino. Let me see. Quentin Tarantino quotes about movies. Let me see. 1 second. And I'm probably not going to find it with you guys on here, and I won't spend too much time. I believe it was Quentin Tarantino who said, if 100 people watch my movie, I hope there's 100 different stories that are observed. Just because people watch stuff for whatever reason they watch it. If they watch it because it inspires them or it empowers them as a part of the LGBT, that's great. If they watch it because they just want to watch science fiction, they want to forget about stuff, that's awesome. If a conservative watches here's an interesting point of view. Here's something, let me say this. I did a breakdown, a 5-episode breakdown that I'm actually really proud of Measure of a Man. And I tried to be as neutral as I could in that. I have over 100 different, literally 100 different comments on both sides. Those who are left-leaning believe I am specifically talking about how evil Trump is and that I am pushing people to get rid of Trump. And then I literally have 100 different comments of people on the right who think that I'm talking about the social justice warrior attack on the culture. Because they watched my stuff and it spoke to them. And neither of them are necessarily wrong. Whatever you want to get out, what you watch, is great. And it is not bad. You are making it seem like it is bad for someone to watch the original series and just enjoy it for being a show. People do not have to get out of it what you get out of it. By the way, you are welcome to come onto this channel and we can have a conversation any day.
I found the "it's just a silly sci-fi show" thing to be an especially common reason given by those who have enjoyed older Star Trek shows or films but don't like more recent productions, such as the Kelvin Timeline movies or Discovery or Picard. I've gotten numerous comments from people who say they liked Star Trek before it got preachy, or back when the writers didn't feel the need to push their political opinions onto the audience. How did these people not see the political messages in original series episodes like Balance of Terror or A Private Little War, or next gen episodes like The Measure of a Man or The Outcast?
I actually agree with him somewhat here.
For some, I think they might have missed the political content of older Star Trek because they didn't feel personally called out by it. Star Trek is popular all around the world, but it has always been first and foremost an American show produced for an American audience. That being the case, the heroes are mostly Americans, metaphorically and also literally with...
So, Anti-Trekker actually did a really good job of addressing this.
Metaphorically and...
So metaphorically, you have James T. Kirk, who is from the United States. You have Dr. McCoy, who is... I think he's from the U.S. as well. Bones, I think he was an American. You have Spock, who is a Vulcan.
Also literally with a few...
You have Scotty, who is actually... He's Scottish, I believe, right? And then you have Uhura. I don't even think Uhura is from America either. So, and then the entire Enterprise, not all of them are from the United States. You have a Russian character as well. Oh, wow. Chekhov. Wow. Who's Russian. And if you watch the original series, you actually see all different kinds of people who come from different parts or different parts of the U.S. So metaphorically, you're wrong. When it comes to where these actors are from, I don't know. I don't necessarily care either. Because there's a couple of things. The original series was a low-grade show. They didn't have a large budget, so they could only get what they could only get. I think some of the actors were not from the U.S., but they couldn't afford to bring people all over the country. And besides, it's going to be you, Steve, that talks about what they push in the show. So that's what we're going to focus on what they push in the show.
Mostly Americans, metaphorically and also literally, with a few notable exceptions like Captain Picard or Scotty, who are established as originating from outside North America and speak
Do you watch the show? Because it's not just Captain Picard and Scotty.
with accents that mark them as such. The heroes in Star Trek, especially TOS and TNG era Star Trek, are straightforward, brave, moral. They represent law and virtue and enlightenment. The Federation itself is depicted as an overwhelmingly positive institution.
It's not. It's not in the slightest. That's okay. There are two things to this. The spirit of what they were trying to write, of what Starfleet is supposed to be. I agree. The spirit of it is it's straightforward, it's truth, it's justice, it's becoming more than the sum of your parts. That's what they were always supposed to be. Now, when you break down the writing, it doesn't work that way, but that's what they were going for. Missed the start, but glad to tune in. Thanks for coming, Christiane Solis. But I'll agree to a modicum. At the 10-minute mark, I'll stop and we can have some conversations, guys. I'm just trying to get through this.
Positive institution. Sure, there's a bad apple every now and then, but fundamentally, the Federation exemplifies benevolent affluence. Its society is open, tolerant, and just.
That's what they're trying to go for, so I'd agree with Steve. That was the intent.
It tries to keep the peace, but when it goes to war, it's always for a good reason, and the
always for a good reason, people. Always.
Enemies are invariably a dire threat to life and liberty in the galaxy. That sounds a lot like how conservatives describe the United States. The shining city on a hill, the land of the free and the home of the brave.
You know, that was the original intent of what the United States, what the United Federation plans was supposed to be. Not that the background of the writing that you're doing has any real impact on what you're trying to say here, or that it at all, really disproves your point. But the original intent of Starfleet, the United Federation planets, at least from an executive level, maybe not Gene. I don't know if Gene was going for it, but I do know the execs who created the original series and then the Next Generation were trying to make it look like the United States versus the Russians or versus the Chinese. That was the intent, Steve.
Indispensable, exceptional. The socio-political problems addressed by Star Trek are usually, and in TOS and the TNG era, nearly always found in societies from outside the Federation. It's the Cardassians who occupy Bajor, the Romulans who manipulated galactic politics to their own advantage, the Klingons who practiced aggressive militarism. It's those people over there whose religious credulity allowed a con artist to take advantage of them, or who discriminated against people of a particular gender identity or sexual orientation, or who hated each other for superficial, arbitrary reasons.
Remember that. Remember that. Remember this specific. He's bringing up this episode right here, and he's saying hated each other for superficial reasons. Remember that. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen like you can see what I'm pointing at.
Despite their well-earned reputation for bigotry and small-mindedness, I've found that many conservatives...
See, why do you lie at the beginning? I would agree that historically, especially, the Republicans have had issues with racism and sexism. I do think that there is a proclivity. I don't know that the Democrats were much better, but the Republicans really did earn that moniker in a lot of ways. I do think there are still problems now, but again, you're saying that all conservatives here are racists and sexists, and all you're doing is pushing people away. Steve, I've lost all respect for you. I really tried to hold on to it, but it is people like you that create division and ensure that the things you hate are able to prosper. Because here's what's going to happen, and here's what I hate about this. There is a small element of people who I believe are in the Trek community that really are, whether they recognize it or not, hateful. They have a lot of hate in them. I do question if there is some racism and sexism there. I really do. They're going to use this to defeat you. Because when you say anyone who has conservative views is a racist, then actual, or sexist, or whatever, then actual racists and sexists and whatever can then align themselves with those who are not, and then just make either drag those who are with them down, or get past the initial bar and have people watch them. It is exactly like what happened. Well, it's actually happening right now on Twitter. I just noticed with my handle, but it actually happened yesterday too. Because I dared to say that I thought a homosexual relationship was done poorly, that was insulting, I got attacked by a lot of people who are toxic on the left. Now, if you actually watch my stuff and you look at my videos, thank you for the support, DSF. If you actually watch my stuff and you know what I'm saying, that is beyond stupid. And what's going to happen is, now that you've said that I am a bigot, that I hate the LGBT community, someone who actually does will now try to align themselves with me, and my viewership will go watch them. Or, because of those stupid idiots, because of the ignorance of those people, I could say, you know what, to hell with this. If having a nuanced opinion, if saying something is just going to get me hell, then why don't I just go full bore? Why don't I just go straight fandom menace? Why don't I do it? I get enough hell anyway. And that's the honest to God truth. I wouldn't, but oh man, I completely understand it. People who have nuanced opinions, who get hell from the right or left, just going full tribal one way or the other, why not? At least they're going to have friends. At least they're going to be able to be a part of a circle that will give them support. And it is people like you, Steve. It is 100K channels that help push this type of rhetoric. This is why I'm talking about this, because and again, for those of you who didn't start, this just encompasses it all. There are right-wing equivalents. There are fandom menace equivalents. There are We Are Starfleet equivalents. There are equivalents to all of it. We need a four-party party. All right.
Are willing, even eager, to support social justice movements so long as those movements operate externally.
I've never heard that, by the way. I don't know what bigots believe that they should have equality in other countries, but not this one. I have no idea what he's talking about there.
Women's liberation is fine for Saudi Arabia, just not for us. We don't need it here. It's them over there. They've got the problem. I'm not saying Star Trek intentionally sends the message that the United States is an ideal society and it's only other countries that need fixing, but because the show's political messages are so often carried by stories where the heroes confront the problems of other cultures rather than their own, it's easy to see how some people in the audience, people who aren't naturally inclined to concern about social justice issues in their own culture to begin with, can take it that way.
Do you ever watch Star Trek? This is my problem too. It's just like Red Letter Media, honestly. It's the information is not only. Actually, I think this is worse than Red Letter Media. I should not have made that association. The only association with Red Letter Media I meant to say was that you're wrong about Trek. They didn't only address external threats. That was something they did. But even in the original series, There was an internal strife, but they addressed things that happened within the United Federation of Planets. They addressed problems within the United Federation of Planets. The original series did it the least, but it did happen. TNG sure as hell did it. DS9 definitively did it. Voyager was off in God's land doing their own thing and screw any type of continuity. And Enterprise did it. Hell, Discovery and Picard does it. They all address internal strife. Granted, the original series didn't do it as much, but it did happen. Aaron Telford, Steve equals epic fail. So much for IDIC. Yeah, don't even get me started on IDIC. I like Red Letter Media.
They need to change is a much more acceptable message than we need to change.
I will agree that people generally do try to make others change versus themselves. Oh my God, the irony here. Yes, Steve is saying that conservatives need to change, that they need to be, they are the ones that are bigoted and racist, and they're the ones that always assume X group does that. This is exactly what, wow. I just realized that Steve is, I have never seen projection so adamant, so blatant. Steve, heal thyself.
That holds true for all of us, no matter where we fall on the political spectrum, but I think it especially applies to conservatives because hostility to change isn't just their natural human instinct, it's a pillar of their worldview. There's something else that we all tend to do, again, regardless of our political perspectives, that helps to account for how conservatives could enjoy a show as didactically progressive as Star Trek. We interpret things in ways that are comfortable for us. There have been numerous episodes of Star Trek with political messages which, by my reading, are harshly critical of the right-wing politics and antiquated social attitudes typically embraced by conservatives. But I've found that many conservatives are able to enjoy those episodes because they just don't see them the same way I do. For instance, take the TNG episode The Drumhead. To me, and to most people, including...
No, you can't speak for most people. You don't know what most people say. I have done drastic breakdowns of Measure of a Man and The Drumhead. I guarantee you that I probably have a better idea of Spectrum. But even if I don't, you can't speak for most people. Stop. It's time to stop.
Including Jerry Taylor, who wrote it.
Doesn't matter what Jerry Taylor thinks either, by the way. The interpretation of the people, of the person watching it, is what matters. I don't give a fuck what Jerry Taylor said about this.
To me, and to most people, including Jerry Taylor, who wrote it, The Drumhead is a warning against the dangers of Red Scare-style witch hunts. It's one of the few TNG-era episodes where the threat does come from within the Federation. The villain of the piece, Admiral Satie, seeks to discredit and destroy first an otherwise innocent Enterprise crewman who is found to have concealed his Romulan heritage, and then Captain Picard himself, whose only crime was to question Admiral Satie's methods while standing up for the persecuted crewmen.
That's what you do, Steve! Steve, anybody who says, hey, you may be wrong about this specific person, I don't think they're racist. You attack them. You have lumped me in with people because I said, hey, I don't think this person reaches or is like who you say they are. And you have lumped me in with them. This is exactly what you do. I have never seen a video that has had more projection in my life. And I have watched G-Man videos. Anyone who is in the, or has been in the Great Debate will get that reference. If there's another G-Man that's not Christian, then I'm not referring to him.
As Picard says to Worf at the end of the episode, villains like Admiral Satie will always be around. And every society, even one as evolved and enlightened as the Federation of the 24th century, will have to remain eternally vigilant in order to stop them from exploiting our fears and prejudices in order to gain power. The most dangerous thought we can ever have is that it couldn't happen here. That's how I read it. However, I've seen conservative Star Trek fans cite Picard's defense of individual liberty during his testimony at Admiral Satie's hearing in order to justify tolerating hate speech. Because, after all, as Picard says in that scene, the first time any man's freedom is trodden on, we're all damaged. Clearly, he was championing the cause of deplatformed white supremacists and Islamophobes.
Steve, first off, I love the poisoning of the well, how you point out and you say hate speech, and obviously you go to the worst examples, which would be white supremacists and Islamophobes. But let me say this. I actually believe that Picard... Well, I honestly don't think Starfleet... I think Starfleet has a wrong think, and I think Starfleet does have a culture where if you believe certain things, you can be outcast. But I would say that Picard would be right if he was to defend speech, even as aberrant as that, as long as it's not specifically pushing for the killing or the harm of another person. Because Steve, here's the funny thing, and here's what you miss about this. Sati went after a person because they had X attribute, because they had the blood of a Romulan in them. She then went after Captain Picard because Captain Picard said, hey, you know, that's not the worst thing to have in the world. And now you're just going on a witch hunt. Anytime you limit speech, you run the chance of having your speech impacted. It is a uniquely American thought. I would say in this era, I could be wrong, but in this area, it is uniquely an American ideal to allow such things like that. But let me ask you this. Do you think Trump should have the ability to limit what you say? Do you think there should be a ministry of truth that Trump should have impact on? Because truly that's what happens. Once you start taking away the thoughts and ideas from the outer edges start shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until no one can say anything. So yeah, certain speech by racists should be allowed. Because once you take that away, then the outer edges become a little more moderate. And then you take those moderate edges away. And then you take those moderate edges away. So yes, I believe that should be the message of the story. Because if Trump had a ministry of truth, you would be screaming to the rooftops about your freedom of speech.
Is that an incorrect reading of the text of that episode? Well, no, that's not really how it works. Terms like correct and incorrect don't apply. A reading of the drumhead wherein the episode argues, albeit...
Are you saying it's subjective? Are you about to talk to me about art?
...indirectly in favor of tolerating hate speech is one of many possible interpretations. I think it says a whole lot more about the priorities of the person doing the interpreting than the intentions of the people who made the episode.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. I would say that your intent on trying to use the drumhead is to attack conservatives and divide the fandom. Whereas my opinion is to discuss the actual political ramifications and what we should do as a society. I agree that it is completely based on what the person's trying to do. You also need to work on your green screen. Either that or that is a horrible image that you're using.
But the point is, the explanation for how a conservative could like that episode lies...
What's up, beautiful?
Did you hide things from us?
I didn't. What are you talking about? I'm live, so be careful. What are you talking about?
Candy?
No, I didn't hide any candy.
I could...
Did you find candy?
Yes.
Where?
on top of the fridge.
Oh, no, that's mine. You can have some, though.
Oh, we already had some. We thought you were hiding it from us.
Well, I'm bad at hiding it. I put it in plain sight.
Yep.
Okay, don't have too much. I love you.
We only had one piece.
Hey,
Yep.
close the door for me, please.
Sure.
Hey, you're awesome.
Thanks, Tim.
I love you.
Is in the possibility of such an interpretation. It's not just episodes. People can read characters they like or identify with so that those characters seem a lot more like them than their
after it gets
creators
past this, I'll
probably
talk to you
intended.
guys.
A few years ago, Anna Marie
All right, we're gonna stop right there, and we're gonna talk about that in a second because that's a fun-filled experience right there. Let me assure you guys. All right, so I'm gonna take a quick break. We're about the halfway mark. See what you guys think. See what you have been saying. Let me know what you guys think about this. Ryan, something or other. Just to address that, because yours is the one I saw. You said that I don't take the intent behind it. You've lost respect or support of me or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, the way I have always looked at it is it's art and it's subjective, and I believe in death of the author. So when you create something and you put it out there, what the actual work says is what happens, not what the necessary intent is from the author. Doesn't matter to me all that much. I think that is the most logical way to look at a work of art, but there are, of course, multiple theories. All right. By the way, let me know what you guys think about me doing this. I know it's popular to do drama, and a lot of people are liking it, or a lot of people watch, but just let me know your thoughts. Laura, Steve, and everyone else, have you ever tried not being a liberal or conservative with all the bickering that comes with it and just try being pro-common sense? Yeah, see, the problem with that is that everybody thinks that... that everyone thinks that what they believe is common sense. For instance, what is common sense when it comes to healthcare? Is it common sense to have everyone be provided with healthcare and have the taxpayer pay for it? Is it more common sense to have individuals pay for the healthcare, thus possibly making the medicine more effective because of the way it works in? Everybody thinks they're the ones that believe in common sense. Author's original intent becomes less and less important the further it is removed from the author at the time of the writing. I mean, again, there are different people. Honestly, I don't give an S about drama, so going to jerk off. Talk to you later, Green Hat. This is my entire intent behind this isn't even an addressing of Steve, as we discussed. It's glad you like it, Tilweez. It's my frustration. It's frustration because it's stuff like this that drives us all apart. There are channels. There are people. There are people that I will never get to talk to that I think would have really interesting conversations. There are Trek channels that will not associate simply because I don't toe the liberal line and because I'm me. And I think that's unfortunate. So, I guess at the end of the day, see, here's the interesting thing too. I don't hate if someone thinks that Trek is the ultimate liberal propaganda piece. I don't hate if they think that it's a great way to talk people into not being Republicans. And if they push it. I think Jessie Gender is a wonderful example. I don't know if she wants the destruction of Republican Party or anything, but I think she looks at Star Trek as probably one of the greatest left-leaning propaganda pieces. I don't know if she'd put it that way, but I think that would be the way she identifies it. And I think that's fine. If that's what she gets from it, or if she talks to people and she's able to convince them of it, I think that's great too. I like Jessie because she's willing to talk to most anyone. And I think that's the way we should all be. I think she's a good example of a... I don't know that she'd look at herself as a leftist, but I definitely think she would be. And I think that she's a good example of that. Her and I definitively don't agree on most things. At least in policy and the way it should have been. You have been blocked by Steve Shives.
Bridge director.
Been a while since I have been able to catch one of your streams. I'm fine, Rambling Connect, though. It's sad this is the one you got to catch. Sorry, it's a little more. Question, why do many conservatives rightly distrust media, but 100% when media says TV, people said bad things about conservative? I don't understand. Why do many conservatives distrust media, but 100% when media says TV, people say bad things about conservatives? I'm confused by that. I get why you feel you must address this, but honestly, the only way to do it is by having him on here or you over there. No, he'll never, I doubt he'll ever come on. And I think that providing the counterpoint is enough, but it's always open. He's more than welcome to come on this channel and we can have a conversation about it. If there's another channel that... Depending on the channel, I may be open to having conversations on it with others. But anyway, if you have people on the right, left and right getting different views from your 5-part video on the drumhead, it shows you're trying to be as neutral as possible. Yeah, that was my point. Anyway, I guess we'll get back to it. Good people of the internet. I think it's about to get spicy. That's a good sound.
Intended. A few years ago, Anna Marie Cox interviewed Republican senators.
Give me a second, guys.
Spineless Trump bootlicker and all-around sack of shit Ted Cruz, and during their conversation, Cruz revealed that not only is Kirk his favorite Star Trek captain, but he thinks it's quite likely that Kirk is a Republican. I guess it kind of makes sense if I get inside Ted Cruz's head, which is easy actually. I just imagine what it's like to hate marginalized people more than I love my wife. I mean,
This is a part of the problem. When you create a stereotype like that, and you can then disprove what that stereotype is, you only give power. So attacking Ted Cruz like this, like you have Trump, has allowed people who want Trump to get in to simply prove you're wrong and to get in there. Again, the reason why I address this is because this is exactly how it works in our fandom as well. In our fandom, people will create a stereotype. Fandom Menace is just full of bigots who don't like anything that comes out of Trek. And then all you have to do is find someone associated with the Fandom Menace that actually does, and then you've disproven the point. And then the toxic elements of the Phantom Menace can then say, well, we're just like that person that they proved wrong. Why don't you come listen to us? Works the same way with We're Starfleet.
I mean, Kirk does recite the preamble to the U.S. Constitution at the end of the Omega Glory, and we all know how much American conservatives love the Constitution. It's where most of them discovered the joys of self-servingly and selectively interpreting texts. On the other hand, in Star Trek VI, Captain Kirk acknowledges and overcomes his own racism, so I don't see how he could possibly be a Republican, just as a matter of canon.
You've never cared about canon, go look at Anti-Trekker to see why he's never cared about canon. Again, if I can prove that Trump, or not Trump, if Ted Cruz, or at least any Republican that's a politician isn't a racist, then I've completely disproved your point, and thus shown how you're an idiot and only pushed people onto my side. Because it always has to be you versus me.
Keep in mind, in that same interview, Cruise also says the original Star Trek pressed for racial equality, but it did so without sermonizing.
And this, again, is pointed out by the anti-trekker, but it's really funny how you sit there and try to call him a racist, and then he completely disproves you. The original Star Trek pressed for racial equality, which was one of its best characteristics, but it did so without sermonizing. First off, I don't know that I necessarily completely agree with that. There were some really heavy-handed episodes, but beyond that, a lot of it would, I think, when they I don't want to say naturalized, but when you had Uhura or Chekhov on the bridge, but your own statement shows how you're wrong, at least in what he said, and it again is only going to make people who don't agree with you hate you, and people that do agree with you continue just to be, I don't know, brainwashed, I guess.
Which, okay, how many goddamn times do I have to cut to stills from Let That Be Your Last Battlefield before you assholes accept that Star Trek the original series was the preachiest show ever?
It is so sad that you continue to reference Let That Be Your Last Battlefield and you completely missed the point. It is one of the saddest parts of this video. Let This Be Your Last Battlefield is sermonizing against you, Steve. Let This Be Your Last Battlefield is a heavy-handed episode. I agree. But what it shows is that people disliked each other or hated each other for absolutely arbitrary reasons. And they would not find common ground. They would not come together to talk to each other. And it ended up in the destruction of their planet. And that is a wonderful story for what we're seeing in the fandom to a degree. We are seeing a division that is not only now limited to the fandom that is watching it, but is also a part of the people who are creating it. And it is causing division, it is causing pain, it is causing harm to the overall product. I would say I am one of the more educated people on when it comes to a lot of Star Trek's history, a lot of the canon of Trek, let's say. And it goes back to what we were having a conversation with. I think that if you took my abilities or someone else's, any other channel's abilities, any other person's abilities, and you combined it with others, that Trek could be so much more. But because of division, like your video, because of division, like the writers and cast of Discovery did, because of the division of even people, we're not coming together and creating something better than what it is. It is the antithesis of the very episode that you're showing. It shows an exceptional lack of understanding and a blinders that, I mean, there's so much bias that it is disgusting. And I hate it. I actually don't like it because you have a lot of interesting ideas on Trek. And I really wish it did not have to be this way. But it does. It does. You create stuff like this, which divides people, and then Anti-Trekker and myself and others have to create counters to show how you don't know how to just to show why you're full of bollocks. And the sad thing is that people will use this video to attack you, when the entire point is we shouldn't be attacking each other anyway.
It's always been political. It's never been subtle about it. They're half white and half black, for Christ's sake. This is understated social commentary to you?
The only person, and this happens with you a lot, Steve, you only care about their race. You only care about the color of their skin, not the content of their character. This is one of the most racist things I've ever had on my channel. And I've actually done a breakdown of this very video. Not this video, this very original series episode.
There's also a streak of conservatism tucked away within Star Trek's oft-celebrated aspirational vision of the future. Again, I don't think it's intentional, but it's definitely there, and I can see how it might appeal to a person with a conservative mindset. Star Trek depicts the Earth of centuries to come as a paradise, a place of prosperity and equality and peace. It's a prophecy of hope and possibility. We can overcome our prejudices. We can value curiosity over ignorance. We can live by our noblest ideals instead of our worst impulses. And when we do, we can create a world without poverty, without war, where everyone has an opportunity to live and grow and explore their potential. And it's all so far in the future that we don't need to even worry about building toward it right now.
How can we, Steve, how can conservatives work towards it if they're always being antagonized by people of your stripe? In all sincerity, how could anyone move towards a more perfect civilization if you look at the color of people's skin and not the content of their character, and you constantly do this where such ignorance has to be addressed? By the way, guys, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Harry is sure it's a story. Get over it. I don't know what that means. Or I don't know if you're talking to him, but okay. Lore Reloaded equals most respected Trek channel. I don't know about all that. Could it be that he's pandering? And then Joe, could it be that he's pandering to certain groups for views? He wasn't always like this. I think I've never known Steve before this. People have said that. I don't know. I don't think he's pandering. So there's a couple things. First off, I don't think Steve is pandering. But even if he is, as I stated at the beginning of this episode, this live stream, it's not even necessarily Steve. Steve's the avatar that I'm addressing, the person that I'm addressing. But it's Steve's ideas that I'm countering. Steve's welcome on this channel. I generally don't ban people. I think that all ideas should be discussed because that's how you find the stupid ones and how you find the good ones. I'm really just addressing Steve's philosophy, not necessarily Steve. Though I'm sure it wouldn't feel like that if you watch this. Not that I think you will. Matthew L., it's like you feel personally attacked, and this is hilarious. I do. Let me say this. I'm very frustrated about these ideas and this philosophy. I really am. Because I think that it's what destroys the fandom. I think it's the worst part of what I do. And I think that we are a divided world because of things like this. So do I take it personally? I do. Because I think that the reason why some hate crimes exist is because of philosophy like this. I think that the reason why it seems like the country is falling apart is because of ideas like this. I don't want to get too political, but I have a sincere belief that we are moving. I don't want to argue it. I'm just giving you my reasoning behind it. I have a sincere belief that we are moving towards a populist state. And whether that populist state is going to be extreme right or extreme left, I don't know. But I do think that that's the path we're on. And it's because of ideas and philosophies like this that make that a thing, that it doesn't have to be. So yeah, am I taking it personally? In a way, I am. Not that Steve's attacking me personally, but because these ideas are so toxic, it's destroying not only the country I love, but the fandom I love, and just the entire world. My kids are going to grow up in a very divisive world where they have to pick a tribe, and whatever tribe they pick, that other tribe is going to hate them for it. And it's because of ideas like this that push it. So yeah, is it personal? Yeah, sure, to a degree. It's not Steve attacking me, but it is personal because I got to live in this world. And how do I address that? Like this. Addressing the fandom. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. Maybe you'll hit the like button, maybe you'll dislike it, maybe you'll unsubscribe, maybe you'll subscribe for the first time. It doesn't matter, because I think that this is a big issue that needs to be addressed. Thanks for the support. The individual who was attacked about Shrek. Ah, that's your issue. Zaru, you should criticize people because they divide when all they are doing is providing legit criticism. I've provided counters, but if you think that the criticism is legitimate, Zaru, please let me know.
See, there are two ways to respond to Star Trek's depiction of a hopeful future for humanity. There's the progressive response. Now that we have an idea of what the world could be like if we achieved something close to true social justice and equality, let's all get to work making that world happen. That's the response the creators of Star Trek were hoping for when they made the show. Gene
One you didn't take.
Roddenberry said so.
Ha! By the way, if you're ever going to make an argument and talk about how great the world should be or what you want to see in the world or progressive or liberal ideas, do not reference Gene Roddenberry as the pinnacle or where you want to see it going. That is a bad idea.
But there's also the conservative response. Humanity figures all this stuff out eventually, so just relax. Let's also remember...
Steve! I'm right... I don't even consider myself a conservative. I really do think I am now left of center. I'm closer to the center than I am to the left, but I'm left of center. But Steve definitively would call me a conservative. He would not only call me a conservative, but a racist and a sexist. Steve... Man, I'm sitting here trying to make the world great too. All you have to do, Anti-Trekker would call himself a conservative. I don't know who wouldn't refer to Anti-Trekker as conservative, and he tries to make the world a better place too. You just have to find one to disprove it. Stop trying to divide us. Generally, everyone wants what's best for the fandom, for the world. Can we just come from that point of view and then try to figure out how to go from there?
That, as is explicitly established in the film Star Trek First Contact, humanity doesn't really start to get its shit together until after Zefram Cochrane becomes the first human to fly a ship at warp speed, which attracts the attention of the Vulcans. Which means not only...
Hey, what's up, Anti-Trekker? Yeah, you're the one that inspired me to do this. I put your video in the link below, as well as have been giving you shoutouts. But I'll put it out here. Thanks for the support. If you guys haven't checked the link below, Anti-Trekker does a much better response than I do to this. He is very much more succinct.
Is our happy egalitarian future far enough away that we don't have to start working on it for a while yet? It's just a fantasy anyway. It's all a part of the silly space show. Just enjoy the silly space show that isn't about anything. I've also gotten this from conservative Star Trek fans more times than I can remember. Star Trek shows us what we can accomplish when we stop making everything about race and gender. Seems like an odd statement to make in reference to a show that has produced so many episodes arguing passionately against unjust discrimination.
I don't understand how you. Well, let him finish his sentence.
If Star Trek is saying the solution to racism is to stop talking about racism, why does Star Trek talk about racism so much?
Because okay, the original series and on has normalized the races to where they interact and it doesn't matter that everyone is the sum of their parts and that they are good or bad based on the content of their character. Every episode you watch is the nuanced, subtle showing of how interactions between the races and sexes can be done and doesn't have to be pointed out or talked about. Now, why are there specific episodes that address racism and sexism? Steve, I'm surprised I have to tell you this, and it's going to blow your mind. There is racism and sexism actually in the world today. So they have to talk to modern audiences that have to deal with it, Steve. They don't generally, Steve, have to deal with it, but we do. Even in today's society, I would say, you still have sexism and racism. Now, where and how and the impacts, we're going to disagree. I think conservatives have I think people who are conservative have have a brighter view or a better view of how gender and races are treated today than may actually exist. But they still accept that racism and sexism is a thing. Do you not watch? Wow. Just Cause 4 is now free. That's crazy. Do you not watch Star Trek? I mean, there were several episodes where in the original series, probably the others, but the original series pop up, where they go out of their way, Steve, to show societies of the past how everything's normalized now. I forget what it is, and if Anti-Trekker's still here, maybe he knows, but there was an episode where they bring a officer onto the Constitution. I think it was a U.S. officer, and it was where we got there's 13 constitutions that are in the thing, and the officer looks confused because he sees a female. And he's like, "There's a female that's working in the military," and Kirk says, "Yeah, we have a combined military now. Women and men work together." It was normalized. Every episode is normalized. You're pushing a narrative that isn't true that continues to divide the base. What's up, Kevin?
But that's another unintended consequence of showing us a society where people have finally put a lid on prejudice and inequality. Conservatives see a diverse, multicultural, gender-equal society where racism and sexism are hardly ever even mentioned explicitly, and they think, see, the crew of the Enterprise gets along fine, and they don't worry about this stuff. Why should we?
No, they don't, Steve. No, they don't. I will agree that conservatives, hard conservatives, will say things aren't like they were before. If you go and watch Steven Crowder is going to say, "Praise the Lord, we've destroyed systematic racism and systematic sexism. Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition." But Steve Crowder, the pinnacle of conservatism on YouTube, would never say that sexism and racism is gone. He would never say we don't have to worry about it. Do you need to be let out? He would not say that.
Up Up to this point, the reasons I've offered for why conservatives like Star Trek have been based heavily on interpretation. But there are other aspects of Star Trek that I think allow the show to appeal to a conservative without having to read them differently than the authors intended, write them off as fantasies, or allow them to be swallowed up by the pulverizing gravity well of moral apathy and selfishness that sits where their heart should be. In certain ways, Star Trek is a lot more conservative than politically correct SJW soy boys like myself did, write them off as fantasies, or allow them to be swallowed up by the pulverizing gravity well of moral apathy and selfishness that sits where their heart should be. In certain ways, Star Trek is a lot more conservative than politically correct SJW soy boys like myself like to admit. The most conservative thing about Star Trek is probably that it centers, for the most part, on Starfleet, which is a military organization. I know company line, both in universe and in real life, is that Starfleet is not the military. Its purpose is science and exploration and diplomacy, and that's great, but also that's bullshit. Yes, Starfleet does all of those things, but it also has a ranked hierarchy, a formal chain of command, and when the Federation goes to war, it's Starfleet that fights. There's no getting around it. It's the Space Navy. And in Star Trek, Starfleet is the ultimate instrument of good. Starfleet brings aid to the needy. It brings civilization to wild, uncharted worlds in the form of Federation colonies. It protects the Federation and indeed the rest of the galaxy from the threats of other, less benevolent nations. That's exactly how many American conservatives see our armed forces. Why wouldn't they enjoy a show that celebrates and glorifies the military and reinforces their view of it as a noble and necessary institution?
Just so you know, a lot of liberals and Democrats love the military too. I know people hate to hear that, but there are, I would say a majority, I could be wrong, but I'd say a majority of liberals and Democrats really appreciate our military, if not hold it as in high regard as Republicans. I really hate that that myth exists. And just to address it, why shouldn't he look at Gene's perspective on the future? Can you give an example? Gene had a lot of bad and toxic ideas when it came to what he wanted to go with through Star Trek. He had a lot of things that were very... Some of it was just toxic. Some of it was very weird. He was very... He believed in... a lot of sexualized things when it comes to the future. Oh man, there is a lot. He had some really intriguing views on women and their role in even in the future. A lot of the women's rights that you see didn't come from... This is arguable, but I sincerely believe it. Didn't come from Gene, but from the executives. He was not pro-feminist by any stretch of the imagination. Gene did have some fantastic ideas. He created Star Trek after all. But looking at him as a role model, or even looking at him for a lot of his ideas, I think is folly and not where you'd want to go. I think if Gene was alive today and he created Star Trek now, and Twitter existed, and Reddit and Tumblr existed, I think that he would have poisoned the well so much that Star Trek would have never been, because he was very vocal about his ideas, and he didn't have some of the best ideas. I would suggest, if you're interested, I would say go and do some research into Gene. I think you'd be surprised at how little control he had over Star Trek. A lot of the things we see, he fought tooth and nail for. He fought tooth and nail against. A lot of the good ideas, he fought tooth and nail against. The only thing I'll say about that, though, is that I think Gene was a product of his time, of when he was born and what he grew up with. It doesn't make it right, necessarily, his ideas, but can you blame someone if they're in a culture and told something?
There's also the fact that most Star Trek heroes have been human, and the majority of them have been white, particularly the series leads, while the villains are nearly always identifiable at a glance as non-human. Klingons have bumpy foreheads and darker skin. Cardassians have visible ridges on their faces and necks and darker skin. Jem'Hadar have bony spikes, a rugged reptilian appearance, and darker skin. Are you starting to see why this might appeal to conservative white people?
Oh my God! And see, this is a part of the thing. So here's a part of it, and this is why I'm addressing this, is because people will say something, and you know, the toxic right is genius because they've made this into an art form. But Steve just did it, and he makes it so it is just ridiculous. He has one point that I think may actually hold some bearing, and then a ton of stupid points. And he tries to lump them together, making that one point seem stupid. Now, my issue here, again, is because if you're going to do something like this, you need to have good ideas to have the discussion. So, let's just address it real quick. Let's just talk about it just for a second. The first thing Steve says is that all of the main leads have been white. And I think he threw in heterosexual, generally. In the original series and in The Next Generation, that was true. And if you want to say that that was a concern, that perhaps there was preferential treatment to white males in the past, I honestly don't think that that's necessarily inaccurate. Now, I know that's going to piss off a lot of people because a lot of people in here are right-leaning and believe that that stuff like that never happened. But I think that may actually have some bearing. However, that is something that was fixed in Deep Space Nine. Not fixed. That was something that we don't see in Deep Space Nine. That is something that we don't see in Voyager. They expanded past that. So you are cherry picking at best. Secondly, Klingons, dark skin. They're black. I agree. Even in the video you present, the Jem'Hadar are white. And in the other one you present, the Cardassians are, where are they? Wherever. The Cardassians are white. They're pale. The Cardassians are paler than white humans. So to address it, because it's coming up, if you're going to say that your main leads, the one that you're putting on screen, are white, then yeah, you might have an argument for that. You did have Geordi, you did have LaForge, you did have Uhura, you did have Chekhov, so it's not that they didn't have actors of different races. But if you want to say the ones that are put on the front of the screen, the captains, okay. But it was an issue. Even if it is an issue, it was fixed or addressed, and the enemies that they go up against aren't black. Not all of them are black. And also, Kevin Thomas brings up a good point. Klingons are black. That's why they're so awesome. I don't, it's whatever you get from it. Klingons are beloved. They're a beloved species. And they became one of the most powerful and best allies. In fact, they were given, I think that the original series movie Klingons are the best Klingons in the entire franchise, because I love how they address honor. I think it is one of the best ways honor should be done. That when you think of knightly honor and things like that, like knights saving damsels in distress. What is it? Who am I trying to think of? It's a really well-known the Round Table. In those knights, when you think of that, I think the Klingons in the original series movies probably did it the best when it came to that. So you're just wrong. and you're putting ideas into other people's heads. How many? 40,000 people have watched your video. 40,000 people. And 40,000 people are going to take that and just internalize it when it's bullshit. I don't remember Martok and Gowron being black. I mean, that's fair.
Have visible ridges on their faces and necks and darker skin. Jem'Hadar have bony spikes, a rugged reptilian appearance, and darker skin. Are you starting to see why this might appeal to conservative white people?
No, you bigot.
It's not that Star Trek is intentionally racist, usually, but it does.
Yeah, that was really racist. I think me and Steve would agree that is the pinnacle of racism right there. I would agree on that.
Contain certain tropes that people with racist beliefs, biases, or assumptions could find comforting. In conclusion, if you are a conservative who is a Star Trek fan, please don't watch my channel.
Done.
But before you go...
I'm not conservative. Again, I think you would consider me conservative. I don't consider myself conservative, whether I am or not. Done.
So I'm really not trying to gatekeep the Star Trek fan community.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. You are just like that guy who says, I'm not racist, but X group is Y. You are trying to gatekeep. You are. This entire video is nothing but gatekeeping.
It's not up to me or anyone else to decide who is a real Trekkie and who isn't. If you like Star Trek, then you're a Star Trek fan, and I'm not here to tell you otherwise.
Yeah, you are.
I am here to make fun of you because you have it coming for being a boulder around the neck of society, and to tell you that your politics suck and are the cause of many of the problems addressed by Star Trek.
I'm assuming you're looking in a mirror.
And represent the antithesis of the intended message of Star Trek. Whatever message you take from it is your business. Please feel free to discuss it somewhere else with someone who is not me. I don't care. So
that's why he'll never be on my channel. Again, welcome here.
Yeah, there are lots of reasons why conservatives might like Star Trek. I don't think the creators of the various Star Trek series have had appealing to conservatives or validating conservative attitudes in mind very often while producing the shows, but that doesn't matter. We can all watch the exact same show and take away entirely different things from it. Often,
I'm not trying to gatekeep Nora Sati. That's great.
what we take away looks an awful lot like what we brought with us.
Hello? Sorry, that one of my girls. And that was that. I said it at the beginning. I'll say it right now. Check out the Anna-Trekker. Go look at his video. It's a lot more succinct. I do it this way versus an upload because, ironically, even though I try to address things that happen in the world, I don't think that it's... An upload generally gets more views than a live stream. In a live stream, I generally talk more me than I do what's in my uploads. So that's why I wanted to do a live stream of it. The Anti-Trekker did an upload, and I think that that's a lot more succinct and it addresses it. Check in the channel to take a look. This is what's wrong with our fandom. This is what's wrong with the country, the United States at least. The projection and the need to attack and gatekeep against something you don't like. That's my entire point of this. One of the most frustrating things on what I do is I do try to be nuanced. Sometimes I do it successfully, sometimes I don't. On my channel. And it's hard because of people like Steve. I'll take a look at what you guys got to say, and then I think we're going to be ending it pretty shortly. And don't fight with each other. Be nice. Whether you consider yourself conservative or not isn't important. If you didn't believe in progressive authoritarian democratic socialism, you were a Nazi. Well, there you go. I like some of Steve's Trek videos, but he does get a bit pushy, his political views, and he's friends with Anita Sarkeesian. Yeah. This isn't even really about Steve. Again, it's about the ideas. In Who Watches the Watchers, bad guys were the White Federation scientists. In Who Watches the Watchers, it was an extreme attack on religion, too. I couldn't stand, and that was something that Roddenberry put up, the extreme and excessive attacks on racism. Or not on racism, on religion. Sorry, I was reading what someone said. So I really think that was a mistake. Talk to you later, Ima. Thanks for coming by. Enjoy your shower. All right, Adam, I'm going to let that one by. But Yosef and Adam, y'all need to hug it out or relax. For anyone against socialism, please feel free to return your stimulus checks. I don't think the stimulus checks are necessarily socialistic. Maybe they are. I don't know. For me, again, I think you have to have capitalism to push socialistic ideals, and I think that some socialistic ideals are needed in a bigger society. Picard is a straight-up atheist. I don't know, guys. I wanted to address this. I think this is the problem with our fandom, and I think it's why we're seeing the destruction of our world as we know it. I do think it will, and I'm talking about the fandom. But this is just symptomatic of everything that's going on. I sincerely believe that we are going to move into an authoritarian populist regime, left or right, one way or the other. And I think it's because of ideas like this. And if I have to say anything, whether you like me or not, whether you agree with me or not, try to at least be open to the conversation. That's what Trek was trying to say to people. Even newer Trek. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of this. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.